going on, you guys? Welcome back. We're at Ethan's right now. I know I mentioned in the last video that we were going to bring the car to a shop, and we actually did. Had it inspected, and it turned out it was actually a lot more extensive than we thought. And in order to stay within budget, me and Ethan decided that we're just going to kind of try and do it ourselves. And yeah, so Ethan took his 240 out just now, and now we're bringing the M3 in. Still have that headlight ballast and igniter on order, but here she is. As you guys can see, last video I didn't show with the wheels on it, but as you can see, it looks really, really good with them. All right, so the first step is for Ethan to loosen up the front wheels before we throw it up on the jack stands, because the front wheels have to come off in order to do the tie rods, which brings us into exactly what is wrong with the car, or at least what we think is wrong with the car so far. So number one is the power steering leak. We thought that that power steering leak was coming from the power steering pump or the line or something like that, but we found out that that was not the case. It's actually one of the seals in the power steering, or in the rack rather, the steering rack itself. And the steering rack comes down and attaches to both of the tie rods, the outer tie rods. And for those to be taken off and adjusted and maneuvered, obviously the front wheels have to come off. So that's step number one. All right, Ethan, what are we doing?
Disconnecting the outer tie rods from the steering knuckles.
All right, so in English, that's, what is that right here? We got this puppy
Right there.
got to come off right at the top. What is that, a 16 millimeter nut?
I think it's an 18.
18 millimeter nut. Now why do we got to take those off?
Technically we didn't have to, but the new steering rack comes with new ones, so
Yeah.
these ones aren't too bad. I can kind of wobble in my hands, no actual play,
So
but
the same people who we got the rear seat from, we had a burned rear seat before, the same people we got that from. We got the new seat from an 06 M3 that was like parted out or whatever, so we got like the door switch, or the window switch rather, and a bunch of other parts from PK Auto Parts, and they actually had this as well, so they gave it to us for like 150 bucks shipped. So it's the power steering rack with the tie rods, but that's not here yet, so first we're gonna take it apart and just kind of address, you know, how to obviously take it apart so we can put it back in. But today we're gonna do that first, and then we're gonna take apart the rear differential, drop the diff, and then take a look at all the bushings that we're gonna need to replace. We already ordered a lot of these parts from ECS Tuning and whatever we could buy kind of from a parts car on eBay. But kind of take it apart, address it, and we already have the other ones on order. So by next week we'll be able to get this thing hopefully wrapped up. So Ethan started on the other side. Tie rod, this is obviously the tie rod right here. That connects to the steering rack that we're replacing. And then that obviously connects to the suspension up here and the brake caliper and rotor. Coming back here, see Ethan swapping out the second one.
make my life harder by not using sockets and open on wrenches.
Obviously just a nut on top. Pull that down, and then we'll be able to kind of have the power steering only connected to where it's bolted, not anymore to the actual suspension itself. Alright, so the second tie rod's off. As you can see, this is hammered in, but we don't care about this because this is literally garbage. It looks like there's like some liquid coming out of something up there, but literally none of this stuff matters because we have, like I said, this whole brand new piece. So now that that's done, we can look into the rack a little bit further and figure out how to take it out completely, and then we can move on to the rear diff. So Ethan is very familiar with doing this, because on his drift car, apparently, Ethan, what is it when you drift? Why did power steering racks go bad so often?
Just from the flex and being at full lock and everything else, bouncing around at full lock, always turning.
Got it.
compression, just literally everything.
But it's leaking, right? That's the issues that you're having, is like because you need power steering, right? Like what's happening right now.
The seals start to leak from it bouncing around over time for so long.
So does the rack go bad in general, or?
No, it's just the seals, so that it doesn't hold fluid.
Got it. So that's kind of a similar issue that we're having. Yeah, so obviously this isn't a drift car, but Ethan knows what he's doing. So he's doing it on a 240. This is obviously an M3, but kind of the whole, engineering and dynamics of steering racks are essentially the same.
These copper washers or aluminum washers are old. We might have to replace.
Up there?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll take a look. Are they like crush washers?
Yeah. It said like, depending on how many times it's been taken apart. Pulling off the inner tie rod boot, definitely able to tell that the rack seals are more than shot, considering half the power steering fluid is inside.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Down there. That's crazy.
Just
So
pour
just
it
pouring
out.
out of there?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a seal in here that's now bad that seals this shaft once it goes on the gears right here while you're turning.
Dang.
So.
Makes sense.
The pinion seal is leaking, so we'll probably have to do that while the diff is out.
Then we gotta do the 3 bushings, right? The front and then the 2.
Yeah, 2 fronts on the diff cover,
Oh, okay.
and then the third one's on the pumpkin.
Got it.
Now I'm going to measure the rack center where it's at right now. Obviously it's centered from the factory. The used rack we're going to get, it'd be a pain in the butt for me to count the amount of turns to each side to figure out what's center. So I'm just going to measure one side when the wheel's centered and put the new rack in at that exact measurement and should be centered.
So essentially, from the factory, you're saying that it's like a line, kind of like a steering wheel would be aligned, like so all the splines
The rack
match
so
up
it
with
can
each
go
other.
the same distance to the right as the same distance to the left.
'Cause
But the
that's-
new rack is just pulled off the car, so therefore it could have rotated one way or the other, and we don't really know what the center
Got
actually
it.
is until I compare it to this one, which I need to measure this one now.
Got it. Makes sense.
There's kind of like the hillbilly way of doing it. In other words, here's a steering rack, not from the E46, from another car, but what I do, let's just say this is center right here. Instead of counting the amount of turns to center it, all I do is measure this like that. And let's say it's right there. And I just put in the new steering rack to right there to make sure it's center, and I'm not counting the amount
So
of
you're
turns.
just turning that until that's the equidistant to where you need to be. Got
just
it.
so I know what's center and not. Because if I take it apart, then I'll have no idea what's center until I twist this to both sides.
Got a smart guy right here. So there's a nut on the top that Ethan's got to grab simultaneously while using the impact on the other side. 15mm nut. So now he's going to do that, and then this thing should come right off. So the steering rack is out with the tie rods. As you guys can see, like aside from like the bolts kind of getting seized from being like super old, this car is literally like rust free. Part of the from being from the East Coast, over in like Virginia Beach, I think. It might have been a couple other places in the East Coast, but overall, not going to be driven in salt and stuff. I've seen these cars like completely torn apart by rust, and there's literally absolutely none underneath, which is really good. Definitely a big selling point. You get a lot of people.
We'll have, maybe cars with slightly better histories or whatever it might be. Not that this one has a dirty history, it has no accidents or anything, but, we're putting it through its paces, bringing it back to life, and it's got a good core. And a lot of these cars don't have good cores. They have, rusty stuff, and rust kind of, once it takes over, you're kind of screwed. So happy to be bringing this thing, good example, back to life. Tonight, obviously, we're working. I'm going to get this stuff done, get everything dropped. Ethan's, developing an understanding for whole suspension platform, and then obviously with the differential bushings as well. The big point here is like anyone can throw money at a car, but we're trying to do it as most efficiently as possible. So doing the things we need to make the car nice and proper without cheaping out, but also not just throwing money at whatever we can to make it easy on ourselves. We could save a couple $1,000s in the budget by doing it ourselves. It's gonna make a big difference in the overall, because I want to bring this car to you guys back to life in a sense where it's still worth what's into it, if not a little bit more, rather than you know, doing a lot of people do with builds, like, you know, putting 20 grand into something and then not being able to get 10 grand for the car. That's just not my style. It might be other people's style, and I'm not hating on that, but I'm not in the financial position to do that. And I want to bring you guys more projects after this is done. So in order to do that, it's got to make sense. I got to keep going negative or positive instead of going negative. So it's always kind of been a style that I've had, you know, bring value to something and then it'll be worth the same or more. So it's kind of like a nice investment either way. You always kind of want to protect your investment and not lose if you can avoid it. So we're working tonight. I'm gonna hopefully get this thing done very soon in the next week or so I can keep you guys updated. I know it's kind of been not a slow process, but there's a lot of stuff wrong with this car and we got to figure out how to do it right, order the parts and all that good stuff. So if you see somebody online doing a rebuild project, understand that parts for the cars are not just readily available at like AutoZone every day. Like some parts are, but most of them aren't. They got to be special ordered, and that's just on a BMW. If you see like a Lamborghini, Ferrari build, like be patient, go love their stuff because they're really killing it, guys. So with that being said, I think we're going to wrap up here tonight. I want to thank you so very much for watching and staying tuned for today's, you know, kind of update. This is the first kind of real mechanical shots we were doing on the car. So if you like it, I hope you really liked it, and drop this video a like for kind of wrenching and doing it yourself. And dislike it if you didn't. If you're, you know, I don't know, not cool, then dislike it. But subscribing would mean the absolute world to me, guys. As always, thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Oh, yeah,